I love Mondays, people, because that means we're getting the first hit of Countdown to Classic for the week. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and as you all know by now, this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert opinion on all the issues relating to the sure-to-be amazing World of Warcraft Classic. Today, I'm going to be sitting down with a group of interviewees as I chat with some of the women of World of Warcraft, all about their time spent in Azeroth. If you're a fan of the show and you consider yourself a bit of an expert in the field regarding certain classes or specs or any other facet of the game, or simply just casually want to raise a WoW-related topic that you're interested in, then please do reach out to me and register your interest in sitting down with Countdown to Classic via the show's Discord, Twitter account at Count2Classic with the number 2, or email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. You'll find all those links in the show notes for each episode. But for now, let's get straight into this interview with Sommerlin, Surnami, and Rarebitt about women in WoW. Hello and a huge Countdown to Classic welcome to a group of you. Ladies, how are we all?
Great.
Doing fantastic.
Awesome.
Fantastic. So just to let everyone know, I put a call out recently to feature a few women on the show, and I wanted to discuss all of your experiences with World of Warcraft and perhaps gaming in general. We'll see how we go. And luckily, all of you put your hands up for the show. So we've been in a group chat this past week as everyone sort of got to know everyone else, and you all got along really well and discussed a few things in the lead up to this chat. So I just wanted to say thanks so much for being here today to all of you, and thank you for coming on the show.
No problem.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So,
thank you for having us.
My pleasure. Now, as we do here on Countdown to Classic during these interviews, we are going to be tearing through all of your WoW resumes. I've had to truncate things a little bit, obviously, because we've got 3 sets of answers coming through. So we won't, we've lost a few of the regular questions, but that's all right. We're going to let people know a bit more about you and your experiences within the game, and then we'll extrapolate on that a little bit further along. So, everyone ready for this?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Question number 1, and I think we'll do this. Let's take this in turn. So I should say, I haven't even introduced you girls. How rude of me. I'm the worst host ever. How about I do this? We have Rarebitt, Sommerlin, and Surnami. So how about through these resume questions, we go in that order of Rarebitt, Sommerlin, and Surnami. So question number 1. With as much specificity as you're comfortable with, where in the world are you from?
I am from Rockhampton in central Queensland in Australia.
I'm from the Midwest in the United States.
I am from Detroit, Michigan in the States.
All right, fantastic. Now, in hearing all of that, I must say to Sommerlin and Surnami, I'm going to try and not show any favoritism here, but we do have an Australian in the group, and I'm pretty excited about that. So, Rarebitt, I'm like giving you a virtual high five right now, but high fives to everyone. But, Australia forever, like, love you. But okay, here we go. So, how long have you all played World of Warcraft?
Oh, my goodness. I started off back in vanilla. I think it was 2005, I think it was. My son's actually got me to play the game. I played it for a couple of weeks in vanilla. I just didn't get the hang of it. Took a break and then came back when BC started and got hooked from then and been playing ever since.
I started back in October of 2006. So kind of just a few months before Burning Crusade. So I did technically play in vanilla, but not for very long. And I've played pretty much, I have played every single expansion since vanilla, although I've been mostly a solo player So it's really only until recently when I've really wanted to get into the group content. And I've been doing a lot of that mostly on private servers then too, kind of in preparation for Classic.
The first time I played WoW was back in 2005, but I just dabbled in it. I didn't really start playing until Wrath.
Okay. Now, rapid fire, girls. What was your main character's class and race when you started? Go for it.
Oh my God. Undead priest.
Night Elf Hunter.
The first one I can actually remember was Fire Mage.
Okie dokie. Now, how many other characters since then have you hit a level cap with? Just the number. Go for it.
Josh, I'm afraid that number's too high. I don't know. There's too many.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. I really don't know, especially recently since you can level so fast.
Yeah, don't know. So many.
Immeasurable. I love it. All right, so we're speaking with 3 incredibly experienced players. That's fantastic. Now, all of you, do you prefer to play on PvP or PvE servers? Yell it out.
PvE. I'm a Care Bear.
PvE. Yeah, I'm terrible at PvP.
So I've mostly played on PvE, but that's just because that's where my friends have played. But I really want to go PvP in Classic.
Nice. All right. Now, your highest raid experience. Just yell out the name of the highest instance that you got to as a raider, if any.
Are you talking about vanilla, or are you talking about...
Sorry, let's go with both.
I kind of haven't. LFR on retail as far as I've ever got.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never raided either.
I did Hera on a TBC server, and I've rated the new content in Legion.
Now, through each one of you, do any of you have a quick plug for any places online where people can find you and your work?
Nothing for me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I just kind of hang out in Discord, and that's about it.
Well, I do stream on Twitch. I'm not good at plugging myself, by the way.
That's all right. Here's what I'll do.
Terrible doing it.
No, don't feel bad. And here's what I'm going to do for you, Surnami. Everyone, if you're a bit shy, Surnami, you can find Surnami on Twitch. And you do stream a fair bit, I would say. I do enjoy waking up a lot of mornings and seeing you kicking off a stream in the morning in Australia and obviously the evening in America. And I believe people can find you at Surnami Gaming. Is that correct?
It's twitch.tv/Surnami.
Okay, so people can find you at twitch.tv/Surnami. Excellent. Now, girls, let's all yell this out at the same time, and I'm going to give you the countdown of 3. Complete this sentence so we know where your allegiances lie. Now, I'm going to say 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Alliance.
Forward.
Both. Someone said both. Was that you, Sommerlin?
That was me, yeah.
Okay. You can't decide between the two.
I play them both. I mean, and when you look at all of my max level characters, it's pretty even. I never picked.
Not a problem. All right. Now that we all know a little bit more about you girls, we're going to dive even deeper here. And as I mentioned, through the week, we were all in a group chat and you girls sort of started to get to know each other a bit and share your stories. And it's these personal stories that I find incredibly intriguing. And I just want to give everyone a really, really light sample of sort of how you came to the game and how you came to enjoy it. So perhaps I'll start with, again, we'll go in that same order. Rarebitt, you first off the bat. What's your background in World of Warcraft? You mentioned that your sons got you into it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I started off mainly playing first-person shooters like Call of Duty and games like that, so I'd never actually played an RPG. I had absolutely no idea what this game was. And, I used to watch the boys playing it or all that sort of stuff. And, and they said to me one day, they said, Mum, just try it. Instead of keep asking us questions, just get on and try it. So I did, and I think I rolled a Night Elf Hunter on one of my son's accounts. And I think I got to about level 10, got the pet, was so excited, and then it was like, oh, yeah, okay. It just didn't gel with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as BC came out, I decided, I'm going to give this another go. And I loved it. But, of course, the boys wouldn't play with me because I was too much of a noob. But, yeah, that's sort of my background with the game. And I've played ever since. Obviously, I play on retail now. I still absolutely love it. Play with a few people from work. So, yeah, it's really good.
Okay, and Sommerlin, you mentioned that a friend pushed you into the game. And just out of interest, was that a male or a female friend?
This was a group of guy friends of mine. It was actually a big group. We had seen the South Park episode because we're all kind of big South Park fans. And at first, of course, we thought it was hilarious. And then afterwards, like a couple of people were just like, why don't we try this game? So then, there was a group. It was me and a group of real life friends that all played together for a little while. They actually didn't play for very long, maybe just like a few months. But I really liked it. I really liked just coming home from work and leveling and just messing around in the game. So I just kept playing it.
And Surnami, how is it that you fell into World of Warcraft?
I was actually at a party at a friend's place, and I am not a party person. So he set up WoW for me on a projector screen. And I played there. It was an awesome experience, but that was back in 2005. But like I said before, I didn't really start playing until Wrath, and it was my brother's girlfriend that actually got me into it.
Where was this party and why wasn't I invited? That sounds amazing. Projector, World of Warcraft, sign me up. I presume they had alcohol as well.
Well, they were doing the partying. I was playing WoW.
All right. I would suggest that you were having the most fun. So, fantastic.
Definitely.
All right. Now, girls, now that we know just a little bit more about you, I just wanted to start with perhaps the real questions of the interview. And we'll start off with some softballs in a way, and then we'll get into the real meat of things. But I just wanted to start with this. And obviously, this is an interview that is focused on women in WoW. And I just want to ask some questions of all of you, and please feel free to chime in whenever with your own input, but I'll try and direct traffic a little bit and address each one of you specifically in a way. Now, there's one thing that I wanted to get off my chest straight away, and it's that I have gotten the impression, and just through this show that is, that the percentage of women in the game is on the lower side. Now, what would you have to say? And Rarebitt, I'll start with you. There's, obviously the theory that women should make up 50% of gamers in theory. What do you think, in your experience with the game, would be a correct percentage of female players just from your personal experience?
Yeah, well, just from my personal experience, I'd say that we would have close to 50% females playing the game. Just about every guild that I've ever been in over the past few years, I mean, we've always had a good smattering of women in those guilds. I've had female guild leaders, raid leaders, right into PvP. Yeah, so I don't know about the other girls, but I think there's a lot of women playing World of Warcraft, and I've certainly had a lot of exposure to a lot of them.
Sommerlin, would you agree with that from what you've seen, it really is 50-50?
I guess I don't think that it's 50-50, but I do think that I tend to join guilds that other women are in, so I think that there is a tendency maybe for women to want to play with each other. So if you are a woman in the game, you probably meet a lot more women than maybe the average guy in the game, just because you meet somebody and you're both women and you're just like, oh, cool, let's play together. And then you meet their friends and kind of go from there. So yeah, I mean, in my experience, like for who I play with, like I feel like I play with mostly women, but I think that the game probably as a whole is probably not mostly women or even 50-50. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say though, because I think people usually assume that I am male in game and I usually don't correct them necessarily. Especially if it's just like a casual, just sort of, you just meet somebody in game. So it's really hard to tell, I think, because I think a lot of women don't necessarily just say like, oh, I'm a girl. They just would wait until you see somebody on Discord or something like that, and then you talk by voice, and then you would know.
And Surnami, how about you? Through your adventures in the game, have you found yourself bumping into pretty much just as many women as men, or is it slightly skewed?
Okay, as far as private servers are concerned, I see a very low percentage of women. I don't know if they're just not speaking up or if they just aren't there. But now if you go to retail, my raiding guild felt like it was almost half women. So I feel like in retail, there are definitely a lot more women than in vanilla.
All right. Well, why don't we pick up on that point that you've just raised in this, the demographic that retail may attract versus perhaps vanilla private servers, and why that may be the case. So what is it about private servers that you think perhaps might dissuade female players?
I maybe have something to say. I do completely agree with Surnami that it is mostly, when I say that I play with a lot of women, I definitely mean on retail. I don't mean on private servers. As far as private servers go, like Surnami and Rarebitt are the only two women that I've met that I have known were women who play on private servers. But I do kind of wonder, because it isn't technically, it's in kind of a legal weird area. And I do kind of wonder if maybe a lot more women are maybe less comfortable playing a game that may or may not be really legal, I guess.
That's a fair point.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I can just jump in there too, when I first started on the private servers, I was worried that I was going to get banned from the retail servers, so it was a bit of a consideration there. So yeah, you're right, Sommerlin. I think that is a consideration for a few of us.
I didn't really play on private servers until I felt like I didn't really care if I got banned on retail because I just wasn't that interested in playing it anymore.
That's a great point. And given what I do for a living, if people aren't aware, working in criminal law, I can say that, I see the stats every day, and just from my personal dealings in court, and it's a great question to ask of you girls, and in terms of the legal and moral, not so much grey area, but, the perhaps illegal status that we talk about with private servers. Do you feel that women in general have a bit of a predilection more towards abiding by the rules? I can tell you that I believe so, just from what I see in court every day.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Now, just flowing on from that, Surnami, the women that you have bumped into on private servers, albeit as few as they may be, are they basically the same kind of people that you would bump into in retail, or do you find different personalities coming to the forefront?
Well, I don't think people actually talk about their sex too much on the private servers. So I'm trying to think if I've ever bumped into another female player. Don't think I have, not openly.
Okay. What about in retail? Now, obviously, Rarebitt and Sommerlin, you mentioned that you're still quite active in retail, and Sommerlin, perhaps we'll start with you in particular. You mentioned that you gravitate towards guilds that perhaps have just as many female members as male members. How is it that well, let's say this. Do you find yourself somehow tripping across more female players than perhaps male players would, just due to a sort of more conversational stance, or what would you put it down to?
I think that the reason that I tend to end up in guilds that are either, very gender balanced or even mostly female is that when I search for guilds online, I like to get a sense of how they are socially before I even apply. So I gravitate towards guilds that have active forums or have some sort of social community that I can participate in before I decide whether or not I want to be a part of that guild. And if I am researching a guild and that guild does have a lot of women in it, especially considering that guild forums and guild communities, you tend to talk about things that are a little bit more personal maybe than you would talk about just, in random contact. So when people are talking, it's a little bit easier to tell whether they are male or female. And I definitely gravitate towards guilds that maybe do have good gender representation.
Rarebitt, you still play a boatload of retail, you mentioned. Do you do a similar kind of research, or do you not particularly mind what kind of representation a guild may have, or is it something that you actively want to know about?
I probably don't mind all that much. I think because the main guild that I play on, actually one of the guys that I work with is actually the guild master. So yeah, I'm on that guild, I suppose, because I know most of the people there because I work with them. Some of the other guilds that I've joined, yeah, I don't actively go looking to see how high the female representation is. Generally just say, yeah, okay, I'll join up, and yeah, you only tend to discover it if you get on Discord or TS or whatever. You actually see who's female and who's not, to be honest. So, yeah, I can't say that I actually go looking for other women to play with.
Okay, now I'll throw this one out to the group in general. So anyone jump in if you want to go first. Do you particularly care about whether or not you are interacting with more men than women, or we talk about representations and perhaps equality in terms of the numbers and the figures? Is it something that really bothers you, and do you want to actively play with more women, or you just, at the end of the day, don't really mind?
Actually, I prefer to play with more men, only because I've just grown up around a lot of guys, so their sense of humor tends to be more in line with my sense of humor.
Judging from the way that I've looked for guilds in the past, I would say that, yes, I do prefer to be in guilds that have good gender representation, or sometimes even are mostly women. But I would say, generally speaking, though, like if I meet people in Discord who want to play, or if I meet somebody out in the world who wants to do an instance, I don't even think about it, really. I really don't care whether that person is male or female.
Yeah, same for me. I think at the end of the day, I don't really mind whether they're male or female. As long as they're enjoying playing the game, then yeah, I'm happy to play with them.
In saying that, however, despite the fact that all of you sort of one way or another don't particularly mind, even if you might have a little bit of a light preference or what have you, once you do trip across women in the game, do you find that there is a bond between female gamers, or it's no different to anyone else?
I'll start with that one. I think there probably is a little bit of a bond. I mean, some of the female gamers that I've been playing with on retail, obviously, because we all work for the same employer, so we've got a fair bit in common and that sort of thing. You can talk about kids and husbands and housework and all the usual women-y things. So, yeah, that's probably...
It's also fun to talk trash about the guys.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say on retail, it really doesn't make a difference because there are so many women on retail. It's really it's not interesting to me, another woman playing retail WoW. But on private servers, definitely, like being able to meet other women who play on private servers, I thought that was really cool just because I hadn't had that experience before.
Okay. Now, Surnami, just getting back to something that you said earlier, you mentioned that through your experience on the private servers, you haven't come across a lot of females, if any at all, really. But in knowing that you may be perhaps a rare commodity as a female on a private server, and sorry, perhaps that's the wrong term to use. It's what I'm getting at is knowing that you are few and far between as a female. Do you find yourself identifying less as a woman or wanting not to talk about the fact that you're a woman due to that disparity?
It usually doesn't come up, except that I play with my boyfriend. So I might say stuff to him and they're like, oh, he's your boyfriend? Like, so they're like, are you a dude or you're a girl? I'm like, I'm a girl, I guess. Yeah. So
when you play with your boyfriend, and this is something that I wanted to touch on for sure, is it something that if it comes up in conversation, do you try to get something like information like that straight out there as soon as you can as a bit of a safeguard, or do you find it doesn't really matter?
Oh, it doesn't really matter. It just happens in conversation because I'll say weird things to him, like, oh, hey, cutie, and then blow him kisses or something dumb like that. But no, I don't usually throw it out there.
Now, Sommerlin, how about you? Do you find that you've ever had to be in situations where you throw out safeguards, or do you, in your experience, guys have been pretty good in chatting to you in-game?
I guess I haven't really dealt with it that much because in terms of just random people out in the world, they just assume I'm a guy. So there's really no need to put down any sort of safeguards or anything like that. I haven't gotten to the point yet where I'd be chatting with people on a Discord server. So it just really hasn't come up. They assume I'm a guy and I let them think that.
Okay. Rarebitt, you mentioned that you're in a guild with a bunch of people that you work with, but I'm also going to presume that you've been in other guilds as well. Do you find that you get treated differently in other guilds where people don't know you in real life as opposed to the one that you're in?
No, not particularly. Probably in most of the other guilds, I don't get on voice chat too often, so same as the other girls. If I don't put it out there that I'm a female player, and you just get treated the same as everybody else.
Okay, so you've all raised this point, and I think it's a very fair one to bring up, in that there's no particular need to bring up, obviously, the fact that you are a female player. But in saying that, do you all actually play female turns, or do you play male turns?
I've got all of them, male and female.
Mm-hmm.
I have played male tunes, but not to a high level. All my high-level characters have always been female.
I typically play female characters only because they're a lot better to look at. Come on, let's be honest.
Well, yeah, that is a point that gets raised a lot. Some people say, even, obviously, as you girls know, it doesn't really matter. You play whatever you want. And a lot of men in the game will start up a female toon. And the argument behind that is they just look better. Would you agree with that?
I think that the female models in the game are just unambiguously better than the male models in the game. So I've definitely never judged guys for wanting to play as female characters.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, some of the female models, like for instance, the female pandas on retail, they are very well done.
Have you ever felt the need, or have you ever started an alt as a male toon with the objective of not being identified as a female gamer?
I've definitely done that once.
I did that once. It was a really long time ago. It was probably in TBC. But I think now people assume that even female characters are men. So I don't really think that it makes a difference anymore.
Yeah, I don't worry about it too much. Usually with my Tauren characters, I like them to be male just because they're bigger and it just sort of suits. I think that the Taurens a little bit better. The Tauren girls look a bit strange, and especially in vanilla.
We talked about, obviously, just now starting female or male toons and maybe doing so for certain reasons. What are some of the stereotypes that you girls have seen pop up in-game about female players and the way in which they play the game? Rarebitt, perhaps if I could start with you.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Well, you're a girl, so you must be a healer. I hear that a fair bit. And even though I actually do enjoy healing and I heal a fair bit for my guild, that's the one that I will generally hear. Yeah, girls can only heal. We can't do anything else. And we certainly can't PvP, according to the guys, which is not true.
Sommerlin, how about you?
I agree with Rarebitt. The one I come across the most is that women tend to be healers. And I've never had a healer at a high level. And I've only ever DPS and tanked in dungeons, so definitely doesn't apply to me.
And Surnami?
I was going to say the same thing, but I do have healers, but I DPS. I don't tank, healing.
Now, in being honest, and feel free, please, girls, to use whatever language you may want to use, not trying to track you down into the crude gutter like I often venture into. But when you hear stereotypes like that, like all girls should be healers or have a predilection towards playing healers, and perhaps that, I don't know how that might come about, just that we as a society perhaps view women in as a carers, in a caring light to lift us up when we're down or what have you. Does that piss you off?
It makes me roll my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with Surnami. It's more of just kind of like, it's kind of irritating. I wouldn't really say that I get angry. It's just kind of annoying.
Now, Rarebitt, you mentioned also that there is the thought, unfortunately, that female players are either not great at PvP or perhaps even don't even engage in it very much. And we talk about the difference between the two. Do you feel that you, in demolishing this Care Bear stereotype, would you rather people think of you as a murderous PvP goddess?
Oh, absolutely. And believe me, if I didn't live in Australia and got better latency when playing PvP, yes, I would do a lot more of it, especially on my rogues. But as it is, all I ever do is just random battlegrounds. And, like I said, unless you've got a really good latency, PvP is a little bit of a joke, as you would know. And, I'd love to try Arena. I'd love to do threes, things like that. But, yeah.
No,
same thing.
I definitely understand. I feel you on the Australia tax that we used to get on the latency back in the day. So engage secret Australian handshake right now. I understand where you're coming from. Now, Sommerlin and Surnami, how do you feel about that? Have you two PvP'd very much at all?
I've personally never been that into PvP, but I do know that there are women out there that are very into PvP. I see them on Twitch and I see them streaming. So it's I don't think it's something that applies to all women, even though I personally am not super into PvP.
I really enjoy BGs. I've done it quite a bit in retail, but like in vanilla, I'm not the greatest, although I have started practicing. That's actually why I started on Feldmas, because I'm playing, if it's red, it's dead, and that's how I'm going to learn how to play my Frosty Mage. Okay.
Now, just to change tact a little bit, do you girls have, and again, we'll go through you one by one if anyone has anything to say on this, if you're comfortable with sharing any of these stories with whatever sense of detail you might wish to, what are some of the more perhaps unruly displays of behavior towards you or inappropriate things that might have happened to you in-game as a result of someone being aware that you were a female? If Rarebitt, perhaps if I could start with you.
To be honest, I can't really think of any situation where that actually happened. I'll have to have a think about that, but off the top of my head, I can't really pinpoint anything.
No, that's great. Sommerlin, anything from you?
I've had quite a few situations where people have tried to get really flirty or that sort of thing, and I just, if I make it clear that I'm not interested and they continue, then I usually just end up not playing with them anymore. But I would say that would be probably the most of it.
Okay, and Surnami, how about you?
Yeah, it's happened to me. Like, guys will yell like, "Oh, show me your tits," or "Get back in the kitchen," or something like that.
So, from the sounds of things, and not to normalize any of that behavior at all, but would you say, and it's actually quite nice, the reason I ask that question is it's quite nice to hear that nothing horrible has happened to any of you. Do you feel like the, let's call it, quote unquote, grief that some girls might experience in-game from male players is relatively lower on the scale of offending, or do you think that it's something that needs to actively be addressed and thought of by male players?
I think it's better now than it used to be. I just remember playing like Call of Duty, like back, I had like World at War and Modern Warfare. Like during that time, guys were terrible. But as far as the WoW community, I feel like they've grown up quite a bit. The people that were playing it when they're younger, they're adults now, and they know how to treat women properly.
I feel like back in the day, there was more of an issue with really offensive names, both character names and guild names. And you could report them, but nothing would ever come of it. Whereas now, I think that's just a lot less accepted.
Yeah, and I agree with the other girls on that one. I think the community has grown up a fair bit. I've certainly witnessed it grow up a fair bit. Like Surnami was saying, back in the old days of playing Call of Duty, I mean, yes, some of the abuse you would get if they knew you were a female was, whoa, way off the scale. But, I think the community has grown up a lot over the last 10, 15 years.
Now, Rarebitt, having gone through, and obviously all of you girls as well, if you want to add on to this, having gone through a bit of that in other games such as Call of Duty, as you say, do you find that unfortunately has desensitized you or made you a bit steelier in regards of how men might say certain things?
I don't think so. I mean, back in those days, and obviously I was a lot younger, so I probably didn't care so much what I said to people. So, I don't think so. I didn't accept being treated like a second-class citizen back then. So, that certainly hasn't changed. But thank goodness the WoW community just doesn't seem to be anywhere near as toxic as that. Maybe it's a first-person shooter thing. I really don't know.
Well, when we talk about the WoW community, just to focus perhaps on what might be coming with the classic community, and I've raised a couple of points on this through the show, and I'm going to be touching it in depth a bit more later on. But one of the things that truly fascinates me with what's coming with classic is the average age of the player base. And we just mentioned that the maturity that does shine through at times in World of Warcraft. Do you girls feel, and Sommerlin, I'll start with you, that when World of Warcraft Classic releases, due to that perhaps older age group playing the game, it will be quite a different experience for female players as it used to be?
I do kind of expect that, I guess. I think that the player base is just so much older now that I think people are just better behaved now than I think that they were back then.
And Surnami, what about you? What do you think about that?
Oh, definitely. Everybody's a lot older. They know right from wrong. So, I mean, you still have a couple of young guys out there that might say stuff, but you got a lovely thing called the ignore list. So you're all good.
Okay. Turning away a bit, perhaps, from that slightly more negative chat, let's go back to the positive stuff, everyone. So, Rarebitt, I just want to touch on something that I'm actually quite intrigued by that you mentioned. Now, you're a mum. You've got your sons who got you into the game. How does that work, the dynamic with your children? Now, do they still play the game at all? I think you mentioned maybe not so much anymore. Is that the case?
No, they don't. No, they haven't played it since, I think it was about Wrath. They finished with it. They started to say, it's too casual. Oh, it's too suited towards people who want to get handed, all their free epics and everything. So they just sort of moved on to other games. And now, of course, they're sort of in their late 20s now, both of my sons, so I suppose they've got different priorities in their lives. But
do they still game?
Oh, sorry?
Do they still game?
Oh, yes, absolutely. They do. They play a bit of everything. Mainly on the consoles, Xbox, all that sort of stuff.
So is there some fun ribbing at get-togethers that your sons and you might engage in about your World of Warcraft playing?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they're always reminding me about the fact that I still play World of Warcraft retail and I'm playing it on easy mode. And I said, well, I don't care. You're the ones who got me into the game in the first place. And they call me a fairy duster. No, not them. Actually, no, sorry, that's my husband who calls me a fairy duster. Because I tried to get him playing World of Warcraft and no, he'd rather stick to his shooters. So, yeah. So I do get a fair bit of ribbing.
So being about 14 years ago when you started in the game, your sons would have been in their mid-teens, I'm guessing. Yeah. How was it balancing being a mum and the duties and great responsibilities that come with raising two, hellraisers in your sons and also trying to get your WoW time in?
Well, that's what I mean. I didn't play a lot, unfortunately. That's the biggest thing about it. I could only probably manage maybe about 2 hours of an evening. I certainly didn't have the time that I do now. So, yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't raid back then. I didn't do a lot of PvP, just didn't have the time.
Okay. And are you loving having them out of the house now that you can go nuts?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay, Surnami, you mentioned obviously that you do play with your current boyfriend, and you also mentioned in the chat that you have obviously balanced WoW in your life with previous relationships as well. Now, have you tried to gravitate towards dating gamers that might be more open to the time that you spend with the game, or has it been something that you haven't really been bothered by?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty important to me because I've been in relationships where I'm really into MMOs. And my ex, he thought they were dumb. He was like, these are easy games. You just click buttons. And it actually kind of put a strain on our relationship and other reasons. But it is pretty important to me. And then my current boyfriend, we've been together for several years now. I mean, we own a house together, so.
And I keep giving your boyfriend a bit of stick, going, I'm going to get him one day. I'm going to get that interview because I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe at BlizzCon.
Maybe. All right, as I keep saying, I'm going to slip him a few drinks and get him tipsy enough to speak into the microphone. Now, Sommerlin, turning to you, you mentioned that your story is perhaps a little bit different to what we've just heard from Rarebitt and Surnami, in that you've mainly gone through the last few years just floating along on your own, enjoying the game. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. I have been mostly a solo player, although obviously I have mentioned that I have been parts of guilds, but I'm usually part of the guild more for just like you get home from work and you just chat about your day or chat about the news or that sort of thing. I usually don't play the game that much with other people in the guild. It's really more of a social thing for me, and then I play the game solo and just I have enjoyed that quite a bit, but part of the reason I'm really looking forward to Classic is to being able to do all those old school raids that I never got to do back when they were current.
And Sommerlin, just to carry on from that, given the time that you spend with the game now, have you found, and eventually I'll get to you other girls on this one as well, have you found that being a gamer and particularly being an MMORPG fan, has that made it hard for you to find specific relationships, or does it, again, not really fuss you at all and it doesn't play into things?
Oh, I don't think it's very cool to be an MMO gamer. Like, I mean that, like, I don't mean that as like a mean thing, but I noticed because World of Warcraft is really what got me into gaming, like as an adult. And I also have a PS4. I had a Xbox 360 back when that was current too. So when I do talk about gaming with other people, like when I'm making new friends or when I'm at work, I almost never mention World of Warcraft. I'll talk about other games that I'm playing, like console games or games that I'm playing on Steam, because I do get the impression that it's not considered very cool to be like really, really into MMOs.
I'm 100% with you. It's only something that I've actually, funnily enough, embraced recently, really with the podcast coming out, in that, you know, I have, so to speak, been in the World of Warcraft closet for many, many, many years, and I don't talk to a lot of my friends about it, because I do come from that kind of jock background where I played rugby and basketball my whole life, and I have a certain set of friends, and yeah, if I talked about World of Warcraft, they'd be like, what the fuck? So I do appreciate where you're coming from. But now I'm much more fine with talking about it, and obviously meeting everyone through the show has been fantastic. But Rarebitt, if I could just ask you, now you mentioned that you met your husband at a LAN party, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, actually. Yes. Oh goodness, that was quite a few years ago now. We used to, a whole heap of us from work, we used to get together and have these little LAN parties up in Mackay, which is a couple of hours north of here. And I suppose it's a strange way to meet your future partner, but yeah, it was a really good way to do it. And I think actually a lot of relationships did start that way. You know, back in the old days when you had to disconnect your computer or your console or whatever you were using and go into a big public place, and you'd meet people, and there was such a good social aspect to it. Because one of the things I've always been accused of in the past is, oh, you play games, you must be totally antisocial and all this sort of crap. Whereas I've actually found that, I've become more social through playing games, whether it's online or whether it's actually going to these LAN parties and meeting people.
And Surnami, just to wrap up this point, in your experience, perhaps focusing more on friends and family now, have you dealt with any kind of negative stigma of being a female with a, video game habit, if you would, or hobby?
Oh, definitely. Well, my brothers were all for it. We used to play games together. I mean, we've been playing games since, we were really little. I mean, we had an Atari and Nintendo, but my mother, on the other hand, she, I should be a lady. I should be into girly things and I should want to dress up. Okay, sorry. I was in the middle of talking, man. He's upset I'm not talking about him. That's what it is. Okay. But yes, my mother, she would want me to be a lady. She would want me to dress up, and, video games just kind of didn't fit into her picture of what I should be.
Okay. Now, in saying that, do you find, again, just shifting gears slightly, do you find that there are trends that perhaps should be a correct stereotype for women in World of Warcraft? Now, we've debunked perhaps a little bit the all women are healers or all women want to heal. We've gotten rid of that one. But are there some stereotypes that you feel should be more applicable? And one thing that all of you said, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but at the top of the show, all of you mentioned that you really hadn't done much raiding. Do you think that's a stereotype that maybe might apply to women, that they don't gravitate towards the end game of PvE?
It could be. I mean, as I said previously, in my situation, the fact that I had two kids, the husband, and was a shift worker, I just didn't have the availability to do it. But I see that it could be, maybe it is seen in the WoW community, maybe that women just don't PvP for whatever reason, whether it be for their home commitments or whatever.
Sommerlin, how about you?
Yeah, I find it hard to answer that question. I guess the reason that I never got into endgame raiding is because I wasn't really in a position in my life where I could say, okay, I can definitely be here at this time every single week. It's just, my life has just not been structured that way, really up until recently, where I would be able to make any sort of commitment like that. I don't know if that's the case with other women who wanted to raid but did not, but that's the case for me personally.
Well, Surnami, perhaps you may disagree with what I'm about to say, but flowing on from what Sommerlin just said, I would tack on to that my presumption would be that, and I don't think this is an outrageous thing to say, women are generally more socially active than men. They want to meet up with friends outside of work. They want to go for that drink when they knock off from the job. And then on the weekends, girls, obviously, I think more so perhaps than guys, want to run outside and do stuff. They want to meet up with friends and family and get social. Do you think that might be a reason that women may, and I know we're just basing this off of 3 answers here, there might be, 1,000 women listening going, oh my God, Josh, I'm a total raider. What are you talking about? But do you think that might be a reason why women don't gravitate towards endgame raiding? Because, and I know you are a little bit, you've done a little bit of it, but do you think that it's because they want to do other things instead?
I mean, it could be, but I've raided with lots of ladies. So, like in retail, my guilds, like I said, like almost half of them were women, and they had children, and they were married. And so I don't really agree with that statement.
Yeah, I definitely disagree with that, just because the reason why I couldn't commit to a regular time slot, it wasn't because of other social commitments. It was because of my jobs that I've had in the past. Either jobs with really long hours, jobs where I needed to be ready to go in, and wouldn't be able to commit to a weekly thing, or just jobs with rotating schedules.
Okay, well, perhaps I'll pose this to the group, and just let me know briefly what your answer might be. But you're obviously all dedicated gamers and you're all dedicated World of Warcraft players. Would you forego drinks with the girls for a amazing WoW session?
Of course.
I think it depends on the situation.
No, I'd pick WoW every time.
What about you, Rarebitt?
Yeah, I think I agree with Surnami on that one. I'd pick WoW.
Okay.
Why don't you do both at the same time? You could have drinks and play WoW. What's wrong with that?
Exactly.
That would be the best.
Okay. I see where you're coming from. That's great. Combine the best of both worlds. Okay. Moving on, girls. With I'll start with this one. We lightly touched on it before. Do you find that you will, and I don't want to put this crudely, but would you announce your office as a woman at a certain point when chatting to people, or do you just feel no need whatsoever? It's completely irrelevant, would you say?
I don't normally do it unless I'm trying to troll somebody and just messing with them.
Yeah, I guess I rarely ever make an announcement or tell people. If people find out, they find out, I guess.
Yeah, same with me. I'll very, very rarely say anything about it, unless just recently I was in a random battleground and somebody was really pissing me off, so I ended up getting a killing blow on them. Well, they wouldn't have known anyway, and I'd put in there, well, I'm a 50-year-old woman, I'm old enough to be your mother and I've just owned you. I thought, hang on, it'll be alliance. They won't be able to understand what I'm typing in. So.
Well, I mean, it's a fair enough point that you've all raised. It's just something that I wanted to ask, because obviously it would be it's somewhat of an unfair question, because it would be a huge double standard, because obviously I don't open every conversation in game with, "Hi, I'm a man." And, it would just be ridiculous. But, no, it's interesting to know if there is, a point that, you either feel the need to talk about it or you just leave it. So that's good to know. Now, Surnami, you just mentioned that you might, at times perhaps tease people or toy with people a little bit in game. How do you do that? And do you mess with people a little bit as a girl?
Yeah, sometimes I'll I'm a girl, and then they'll say inappropriate things. And then I'll just play off that I'm actually a guy and just, and tell them if they're oh man, message me a picture of your boobs or something. And then I'll just send them a picture of a dick or something.
Girls, Sommerlin, any experience with things like that? Do you like to mess with the boys a little bit?
I guess I really don't. I have a couple of times found it to be kind of amusing when when I am playing a female character and people still assume I'm a guy. And I think it's kind of hilarious, but I don't really, I guess, do it intentionally.
Rarebitt, what about you? Have you fucked with the guys a little bit and had a bit of fun?
No, I really don't think so. Unless I've been really, really drunk or something and paid a visit to the Moon Guard server and had a look in Goldshire. But yeah, no, not often.
So you're saying it could have happened?
It may have happened years ago, yeah.
Okay, all right. Surnami, just again getting back to you, and I know, again, I have this roundabout way of conducting my interviews. Everything's a circle. It's like True Detective. Everything's a flat circle here. We're coming back to another point I've just lightly raised. Now, talked about playing with your boyfriend at the moment, and the two of you do seem to play together a lot. That's the case, isn't it?
Yes, we actually stream together as well.
Right. So do you find that there are moments that you are glad that he's there with you because of something that might come up in game, or have you never really had those situations arise?
Oh, definitely. He's kind of my savior when it comes to vanilla WoW, because he's played it since the beginning and he's been around for all the expansions. He knows pretty much all the lore. He knows the dungeons inside and out. He knows the quests. I don't know how he knows this much information. So if I have a question, I can just ask him and he'll just blurt out whatever it is. So he has saved me a lot. Plus, he'll notice if like I'm getting too close to a mob or something and I'm about to pull and be like, hey, no. But on the other side, it can also be, it's kind of frustrating because he is very competitive and he likes to be the best. So if I mess up, I will never hear the end of it.
The more that you describe him, the more that I'm convinced you're secretly dating Chris Metzen or something like that. And that's interesting to know. So thank you for touching on that one. Girls, here's what I'm going to do now. I want to read you a quote that I found on the forums. As you know, here on the show, we do touch on the forums a fair bit. So this is a little bit of a long one, but I just want you to listen in and then I'll ask you for some comments afterwards. And this is about the lore of the game and female representation. So please do listen up to this one. Here we go. And I've forgotten the name, sorry, of the person who posted this on the official forums. I do apologize, but we'll start with this one. As a Horde player, Thrall had more camera time than all the female characters in Bro Lords of Orklands. And as an ally, it wasn't much better. Added to that whole let's forgive Grom and forget about Urel, but that's Warlords. Let's talk Legion. So far, the main characters are 6 men and 2 women. Maeve has nearly all her story based around Illidan, and on a bit of a side note, Sylvanas is the only Horde character. I digress. Why is it that yet again Chandris is not, leading the Alliance army in this campaign? She kind of knows a thing or two about leading an army and about fighting the Legion. Or why, can I point out, in many of the Warcraft stories, comics, cinematics, not a single female speaks. And some, there's not a single female at all. But heaven forbid there is one where there isn't a man in some big part of the story. I'm not asking for equal time, but would it kill World of Warcraft if they admitted the most capable military leader the Alliance has is, a girl? Or how about this? When are we going to see a character who has named mother but not father? As far as I could tell, Varian's mother did not have a name until the movie. P.S. I could go on for pages about Tiffin, or many other issues that you could have fixed in any number of patches or expansions, but you not only have not done that, you've made no signs that you will. Will future expansions be any better? Now here's my question flowing on from that statement. Do you girls feel that women are underrepresented in the lore or the overall narrative or general depiction of World of Warcraft? Or do you greatly disagree with this post? And if so, why? Surnami, I might start with you.
I think it's kind of typical in a lot of fantasy or medieval themed shows or games. The men do kind of step up a little bit and they kind of take the spotlight. But yeah, I'm like, you have Sylvanas, you have Jaina, yeah, okay. And then you go to retail, you might see like Tyrande or whatever, but like, yeah, the guys kind of take all the spotlight. I don't know if it bothers me a whole bunch, but yeah, there aren't a lot of women that have main character roles.
Sommerlin, what do you think?
I do agree with the post. I've always felt like Blizzard's writing of their female characters was really, really weak, especially compared to the male characters. And it's something that I think is a weakness of the game. It doesn't prevent me from enjoying the game, but I really do wish that they had better female characters in World of Warcraft.
And Rarebitt?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what the girls have said. Yeah, we've mainly got 2 strong female characters in the lore, that's Sylvanas and Jaina, and that's pretty much it. So, yeah, there is quite a big divide there between the males and the females in the lore.
And how does it make you feel in having those 2 relatively large characters? Would you agree that, sure, it's great Sylvanas is front and center, but Jaina at times is somewhat oddly sidelined?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, too, even though Sylvanas is really front and center right now, I don't find her character to be very interesting. I don't think there's anything really super compelling there. I don't know if people will flame me for saying that. But
how dare you say that about my favorite character?
But she doesn't interest me as a character. And maybe that's just sort of the danger of only having like a very small number of female characters. Is you might appeal to some people, but you're not going to appeal to as many people as you would if you had a greater variety.
Okay, Surnami, clearly Sommerlin's been drinking, so let's hear your thoughts.
Oh, I really like Sylvanas. Her backstory is...
Thank God.
Really messed up. But, Jaina and Sylvanas, they both come off as rather bitchy. Like, I don't really have any, like, really nice ladies. I don't know. But, yeah, I agree. They just don't... You have two people. Why can't you throw us a bone here?
That's a very interesting point that you raised. Do you feel that, and here's my follow-up question, do you girls feel that it's Surnami, if that's your feeling, that perhaps the girls are a little bit perhaps bitchy in a way, do you feel that it's quite obvious that these characters have been written or thrown together or placed in the game by just what is quite clearly a bunch of guys who don't know how to write for women?
Yeah, I fully agree. I feel like they don't represent women the way they should, I guess. Because you look at, like, Game of Thrones, look at their women. They are strong women. They have power. And I feel like they really, like, the women do have power. And wow, those two. But I feel like they could have done so much more.
Rarebitt, do you have any strong thoughts on that one?
Probably not. I mean, yeah, I'm a bit like yourself and Surnami. Always, definitely Sylvanas has been my favourite character as far as the lore is concerned. I always thought that Jaina was Jaina was a little bit weak, in my opinion. If you remember, people were always getting invited round to Terramore to have a cup of tea with her. It seemed to be her answer to everything. But they certainly did flesh out that character, obviously, with the bombing of Terramore and what happened after that. But, they are a little bit stereotypical, I think, for my liking, the pair of them.
Okay. Now, I should say, after I've asked that question, that I haven't done my research and I have no idea if there are female writers over at Blizzard. There very well may be, and they might be jumping up and down now if they happen to be listening to the show saying, hey, we've got women writing these female characters, so back off, buddy. And that might well be the case. But what I was getting at is I was wondering if you girls felt that Blizzard basically didn't know how to write for women regardless of the gender of the people who happen to be writing it. Now, I'll move on from there. Surnami, we touched on the top of the show that you did some streaming as opposed to the other girls. And one thing I wanted to touch on generally is your experience with streaming as a female. And it's obviously something that does come up online every now and again. In your streaming sessions, have you experienced anything that would make you either suggest that more girls should get involved in streaming or perhaps say tread with caution?
I would say tread with caution, but I think Twitch, as a female, you can grow quickly. But I definitely think more women should stream. I mean, it's definitely, if you go on there to the main screen, you see just mostly guys. And I wish there were more women streamers, but you have to be aware that you will have a lot of inappropriate comments made to you. It's just, but thankfully you can just, ignore them, mute them out, and ban them, which I've had to do.
And perhaps Sommerlin and Rarebitt, I know the two of you don't perhaps stream as much or if at all, but what are you, I'll start with you, Rarebitt, and we'll finish off with you, Sommerlin. Rarebitt, what are your general thoughts? Do you watch a lot of streams? And if so, do you gravitate towards females? And then flowing on from that, what are your general thoughts of women in streaming?
Well, I probably don't watch too many streams, to be perfectly honest. And the ones that I do tend to watch, they're generally about vanilla WoW, and they're generally hosted by males. So, to be honest, the only female streamers that I've seen are in other games, like, for instance, Call of Duty World War II. There's one particular girl streamer there who, I don't know whether she's for real or what, but she wears the low cut tops and the heavy makeup and everything, and I'm like, no, I don't really want to look at that. So, but yeah, I haven't seen too many female streamers or WoW, to be honest.
Sommerlin, how about you?
I watch a lot of streaming, and I guess I wouldn't really say that I have a preference for watching either a male or a female streamer. There definitely are a lot more male streamers than female streamers. I guess it does kind of turn me off if I see that a female streamer is very obviously, wearing something very revealing, or if I'm watching her and she starts getting really flirty with the people who are in the chat. Like, I find that to be a total, it turns me off to the stream, and I'll watch somebody else then. But I would say overall, I really don't have a preference for who I watch for streaming.
And I guess I'll finish off on this because Rarebitt and Sommerlin, you just touched on this, and Surnami, perhaps I'll come to you for the final point just on females in streaming. Surnami, and I've seen some of your streams, obviously, and they're great. You have some great gameplay, and obviously you sit there and you're very conservative. You're just sitting there looking as, per usual, just a woman at a computer playing a game. How do you feel about, there's obviously the thought out there, and we've seen them come to light perhaps a bit more, and I'm forgetting the term, and if you remember, please do let me know, but these, these streamers that perhaps do sex it up a little bit more than your average streamer, and maybe the accusation might be there that they're not quite there for the love of the game, and that they're there for perhaps another attraction. What do you think about that whole scene?
I mean, I personally don't like it. I think the term you're looking for is a thought, but I don't particularly like that. But at the same time, I mean, I guess they're entertaining some people. So, I mean, more power to them. If they want to use their womanly charms to get views, then so be it. But you're going to attract a certain crowd. And, I don't want that crowd. No, thank you.
Okay. That's pretty much all the questions of the main portion of the interview, girls. And thank you so much. You're all doing so well. So now we're going to get to the fun stuff. And now it's time for anger management. Each interview, I ask the interviewee or interviewees to hit me with some of their angriest thoughts about World of Warcraft. So, ladies, in turn, and I'll start with you, Rarebitt. Feel free to unleash the hate. What makes you angry about World of Warcraft?
Well, Josh, we're all ladies, women. We don't get angry. We're just chill. To be honest, I can't think of anything lately that's made me angry about the game, so I'll pass on that one.
You're too kind. All right. Now, Sommerlin, how about you?
I kind of agree with Rarebitt. I just kind of annoyed by how angry people get at things in the game. Like, it does get me kind of like upset, sort of ironically, I guess, when I see other people getting really, really upset about the game, because it's for fun. Like, it's supposed to be fun. It's a game. Like, and when people just get furious about things, I don't understand it.
I'm going to be the one having to show the anger in this anger management segment. No, but it sounds great. Sommerlin, it sounds you're angry at anger. Now, Surnami, how about you?
No, I'm going to have to be the bitch of the group. Because I definitely have something I'm really angry about. You know, what really gets under my skin is when I'm sitting around Orgrimmar or Ironforge spamming to give out enchants for tips, and these people come up to me with their pieces and don't give me anything. I'm like, I said for tips. That doesn't mean nothing. And saying thank you is not a tip. I could have sold these mats in the auction house instead of helping you out, you selfish prick. And the only thing that pisses me off more than when someone gets an enchant on epic gear and gives me copper oh my God, come on. You're going to give me copper and you had, you know what? Instead of giving me that copper, why don't you take those coins, ball them up in your fist and shove it up your ass. So even if you can't afford a lot, just try to compensate your enchanter a little bit. Don't insult them with giving them nothing or just a few copper. Just show some appreciation for the time they took to train and farm the mats. It's the least you could do.
All right, so we had two people who are way too nice, and no, I love that, Rarebitt and Sommerlin. I love that you are pretty easygoing, but then also in turn we had Surnami bringing up the rear and going nuts. I love it. Fantastic. All right, girls, with all that done, now it's time for the hot seat. Each interview, I put the interviewees on the hot seat and ask you about a dozen fun hypothetical questions involving the game. So, girls, in turn, are we ready for this one?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah, sure.
All right, girls, first question. What's the best thing you've said in reply when you're returning serve to someone getting a little too familiar in-game with you?
Oh, I like to tell them that I have a bigger penis than them.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that's probably met with a little bit of shock. All right, next question. Ruling out when is Classic coming out and will there be changes and will there be patch progression, you know, all the normal questions. If you could ask one Classic-related question, a specific one, of the devs right now, what would it be? How about we start with you, Rarebitt?
Can we have paladins for the Horde? I don't know.
Oh, so with that, are you part of the changes crowd?
Well, no, I'm not. I would generally be no changes, but it's about the only thing I can think of.
Okay, bring over that from BC. Just give paladins and shamans to all. Okay, fair enough. Okay, some people have said that. So now, Sommerlin, how about you?
I am so curious as to what the disagreements are within Blizzard. You know, we see those topics that people get really heated up about on the forums and on Reddit, but I really want to see, like, what are those topics within Blizzard? Like, what do the Blizz devs just, like, heatedly disagree about that we will never know that they disagreed about it because they'll make a decision and then that's all that we'll know. But I would love to be, like, a fly on the wall during those discussions. Oh,
I've thought the exact same thing, and we are in unison on this one because I'm truly of the opinion that there would be some really interesting, I don't want to say heated, but some fiery conversations over at Irvine going on about what should and should not go on with Classic. And yeah, I think absolutely the fly on the wall status would be fantastic. Surnami, how about you? What's your question?
I would like to ask, what will the server population be? Because that affects so much with the game. I'm hoping for the 3,000 or 3,500 because playing on the private server, having 10,000 people at a launch with dynamic respawn sucks. So I would really like to know what the server population cap will be.
Well, by your experience in the private server, they might keep it like the private servers and have 9,999 men and one woman, apparently, right? Okay, next question. If you had to go on an 8-hour road trip with one NPC from the game, who would it be and why? Anyone who feels like they've got an answer straight off the bat, yell out.
I would love to go with Garona. I think she's probably got some of the most interesting stories. I mean, she obviously has a lot of trauma in her past, and she's obviously met just like a ton of people. And yeah, I would love to take a road trip with Garona.
And in saying that, sounds like Garona's somewhat of a bit of a favorite of yours, Sommerlin. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that Garona's my favorite female character in WoW.
What did you think of the depiction of her in the movie? I
didn't really like the romance. I thought the romance was kind of weird, but I did kind of like, they did change her origin story just a little bit, and I thought that the ending was really interesting where, I don't know, can I give spoilers for the movie?
No, go nuts. It's 2 years or 3 years old. Go for it.
All right, sounds good. I thought it was interesting that they changed it, so it was sort of like a conscious decision to actually be the murderer rather than to just be manipulated into doing it. I thought that was a really interesting change.
But in saying that, are you going controversial and suggesting that orcs should not seek romance outside of their own, like, orcish people?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. I just thought that the movie romance was just kind of cheesy and just weird.
Okay. Now, Rarebitt, anything from you? 8-hour road trip, one NPC. Who you got?
Well, the first one that came to mind was his name? Gammon. You know, that one you keep killing in Orgrimmar all the time. Because he doesn't say much, and if he opens his mouth, you just kill him.
Oh, fair enough. Surnami, how about you?
I would say Chromie, because on a road trip, she would be so much fun. She can time travel, so you can see anything at any point in time. And also, she's bringing us classics, so 2 thumbs up for her.
Okay. Now, girls, what is the meanest thing that you've ever done in the game? Who wants to start off?
Okay, besides sending dick pics, this happened, I can't remember which server it was. We were in a cave and I saw a chest, and then there was another guy who also saw this chest, and I just kind of hid behind a rock and waited for him to pull the mobs in front of it, and I ran up and I took the chest. I'm such a mean person. I'm horrible.
Now, girls, Rarebitt, Sommerlin, anything from you?
No, not really.
That's okay.
The worst I've ever done is just teabag somebody in a battleground. That's it.
How about you, Sommerlin?
Yeah, I guess I'm not very mean-spirited in the game.
You're too nice. You're an amazing person. You're a glowing light of virtue within the game. That's absolutely fantastic as well. Okay, well, Sommerlin, perhaps we'll start with you because this one's a little bit more perhaps up your alley. Do you have a proudest in-game moment?
Oh, that's a good question. My proudest in-game moment was I actually got to drop the news of Cataclysm to another character who did not know that it was happening. It was the night before that patch, and he was just kind of a random character I just met out in the world. He asked me if I wanted to quest together. I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So we were questing together, and I said, like, oh man, you know, it's kind of weird how tomorrow we don't even know if these quests are going to be here. And he was like, what? I'm like, you know about the patch tomorrow, right? And he had no idea, or maybe he was just pretending to have no idea. I don't know, but I told him that tomorrow, you know, that the big patch was going to come out and that the entire old world was going to change, and it blew his mind. I think that he was very, very new to the game.
Very nice. Surnami, Rarebitt, anything from you?
For me, it was probably telling my boyfriend where a quest NPC was when he didn't know. It was like, victory! I knew something you didn't. Haha.
Excellent.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
I once was on a level 14 character, and I was talking to a guy that I knew who was a really high-end raider. This was in TBC, and he thought that his mail just disappeared if you had more than 50 pieces of mail. And I had to explain to him, like, no, if you just take some out, then the mail will appear. And he had no idea, and I was kind of proud of myself for, I'd only been playing the game for maybe about 4 months at that point. I was able to teach, like, this really high-end raider something that he did not know.
And how about you, Rarebitt?
Well, there's probably not a lot for me. I suppose the proudest moment was many years ago when my sons were still playing, and they took me into a dungeon. We'd probably done about 10 or 11 runs of Shadowfang Keep or something, and I kept causing wipes. And, I think the very last run, I didn't cause a wipe, so I suppose I should have been proud over that.
Fantastic. All right, next question, everyone. Do you have a most embarrassing in-game moment?
There's been several times where, you know, I accidentally pulled a mob. I'm like, oh no! And then I backed up and I pulled more mobs and killed the group.
I think I had one just recently. I think it might have been last weekend or something. We were running dungeons on on retail. I can't remember the name of the dungeon, Nighthold or something. It was anyway. And there's an elevator or something right at the end, and there was three of us, three Taurans, and all of us Taurans, we didn't realise it was an elevator, just jumped and just ended up dead. And it was just the funniest thing. All of us cows dead for some reason, so yeah, weird.
I was once in a guild, and we decided to have a guild hide and seek in Stormwind. And when we started playing, it became very obvious that everybody else had done just a ton of research on where the best hiding spots were. So when I tried to play it, I was just like everywhere I went, it was just like, I felt like people could see through walls or something, because people always found me first, because everybody else had done apparently a ton of research on like the best hiding spots in Stormwind.
All right. Quick fire fashion, ladies, starting with you, Rarebitt, then Sommerlin, then Surnami. What's your best guess as to the release date of Classic?
Oh, God. November 2019.
Okay, Sommerlin.
Summer 2020.
Ooh, Surnami.
First quarter 2019.
Okay. Now, final question, everyone. Tell me why you are most excited for World of Warcraft Classic.
I think for me, it is that whole sense of the community. Given that I really didn't play very much of Classic the first time around, and I've heard so much about how strong the community was, and how you couldn't run around making an arse out of yourself, otherwise you wouldn't be invited back into various dungeon groups or whatever. The servers were like a community, and you got to know people, and there was a strong bond between people. That's what I don't see so much on retail anymore, and I would love to be able to experience that, and I'm really looking forward to the strong sense of community when it comes out.
I'm really looking forward to leveling and being able to do the dungeons as I'm leveling up, and then eventually the endgame content, which is something that I never got to do when vanilla was actually current. And I think it'll be something that I can do then on a reasonable timeline too, because the reason why I don't feel like that's quite as feasible on private servers is just the speed at which people level up and then abandon the server. So I think when it's an actual Blizzard product, you'll have a much bigger audience for it, and then it'll be more feasible to be able to do these dungeons as I'm leveling up.
I agree with both the ladies. The community and also in-game rating. I have not done the vanilla rating at all, so I am pretty excited to try that out.
All right. Well done, ladies, and thank you so much for being a part of this special Ladies' Day of Countdown to Classic. I hope you all had a good time. Please feel free. Surnami, now, do you want to plug your stuff again real quick? Everyone can find you at twitch.tv/Surnami. That's Surnami. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm also on Twitter for I'm Surnami_gaming.
And Rarebitt and Sommerlin, I'm guessing if anyone wants to say hello and talk about anything that you've mentioned in this interview, you can be found in the Countdown to Classic Discord. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct, yes.
All right, girls, look, thank you so much to all of you. I can't be more grateful for taking the time for this group chat on Countdown to Classic and being so patient with me while I ask all of you questions in turn. I know it's a little bit different to how we've done things in interviews on the show, but you've all been fantastic, and I just want to say thank you to you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And that's the interview with the girls done, and thank you so much to all of them again for taking the time out for Countdown to Classic. The girls became fast friends via this chat, and it's great to see them talking up a storm with each other in the Countdown to Classic Discord. If you'd like to join the Countdown to Classic Discord, which is growing by the day and has some of the most amazing, intelligent chat that you will find about World of Warcraft Classic, probably along with the Classic Druid Discord, which I've similarly really enjoyed, then please find the Discord link in the show notes. But with with that done, that's the show for the day. But let's get through some cleanup and shout-outs. Recently, I got the following email from a listener of the show and wanted to just quickly read this one out, as listener Victor says the following. Thank you for sharing your story about mental illness. I myself suffer from borderline and generalized anxiety disorder and definitely feel like we need to lift our stuff so that the stigma diminishes. So many people are afraid of sharing. A lot of people, I can tell that they have similar problems, and I tend to open up to them and then make them feel accepted and heard, something that they might often miss. I also played World of Warcraft to escape reality. It got very bad at some points in my life, but on the other hand, it also saved me from spending too much time with the wrong people, who today are either hooligans or in prison mixed up with drug abuse. So it was very easy to argue with my parents when they asked me to spend less time on the computer. They knew my alternative wasn't really bright either. But anyway, Josh, I shared your pods to everyone. In Sweden, we're very frequently listening on Spotify, as you mentioned on the air once. Now, I've read that email as I just wanted to note that when the show did turn its attention to mental health and the issues that some gamers go through in that regard recently on the show, I've never received more feedback about any segment that I've featured. And 100% of it was positive, as many of you reached out to me expressing that you were happy to hear about this issue. And that was really quite humbling, and for that reason, the show will continue to occasionally touch on external issues regarding the game, such as mental health, gaming addiction, I should say, and targeted player abuse. Whilst Countdown to Classic is not here to tell people how to consume the game, the show does aim at least to bring some attention to these issues for people to bear in mind and do with as they will with the information. Anyway, that's the cleanup. How about some quick shout-outs? I just want to thank the members of the Countdown Council. As always, I call them every week for input on where the show should head in the week to come. So shout-out to Borzen, Raidmark, Camp Sowen, Palfurus, Rarebitt, Seven Winters, Surnami, Wilson Ma, and Valaco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be the same without your support. And also a big thank you to supporters Hurlbert, Good Kisser, Myrtle Banks, and Purgatos 81, as always. Thanks for listening, everyone. I shall see you again on Wednesday for Countdown to Classic's run-through of the highly anticipated story of Sylvanas Windrunner. And spoiler alert, it may or may not come with a bit more voice acting. Look forward to seeing you all again then. Until then, have a great start to the week and enjoy your time in Azeroth, Vanilla fans.